Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Phil Naylor and this is Tea with a Therapist. Tea, therapist. So the two go together. This is going to be a short one today. Tea with a Therapist. You haven't joined me before. It's just me kind of talking about my point of view in terms of things psychological, personal development, therapy, and all those things. So this is the long weekend, we call it the May 24th long weekend, even though it's actually only the 19th today. So May 24th long weekend in Canada, the unofficial start to summer. So most people are probably out enjoying their summer. And so I'm going to make this one short today. And I'm just going to spout off a little bit about how mental health has been made so complicated. And it's actually not complicated. Understanding mental health is simple, but most people aren't, it's not presented as simple, because we get it medicalized and we talk about brain imbalances and hippocampuses and amygdalas and all kinds of things, but, from a very practical point of view, in working with this stuff for a long time, most mental health breaks down to trauma and fear. If you really want to get down to it, probably 80% of all mental health is trauma and fear. Trauma usually being childhood trauma. It doesn't necessarily mean big, bad, ugly things, but just things that were overwhelming at the time and difficult to deal with, and they got kind of stuck in there as things to be afraid of, and those things get carried on over time. And probably the number one mental health issue is anxiety. And what's anxiety is about fear. It's really just another word for fear. It's like ongoing fear. But we're afraid of something. There's something that's a threat and we're afraid of it and we're dealing with our fears. So, we're geared to be afraid of stuff, to scan our environment and look for things that could be dangerous. And we get stuck in those, and that becomes an orientation. And the other thing is that we're creatures of habit. Sometimes we have dysfunctional or non-functional, inappropriate ways of seeing the world, thinking about the world, and having fears that that are we're programmed to avoid. And we learn these things over time. We condition ourselves into a certain way of being. Who we are is basically the accumulation, a habitual accumulation of how we've interacted with our environment since birth. We learn these things and we get stuck in that. We're creatures of habit. We don't like to change. It's not easy for us to change. We're geared to kind of sameness as much as possible. And so when we get stuck in a dysfunctional or a pattern that isn't supportive, doesn't empower us, a disempowering pattern, our systems are geared to keep repeating that over and over again. So it becomes difficult for us to change. Not that we can't, but we have to make a concerted effort to do that. We have to make a focused effort. But most of us are resistant to change. So we just want to continue the sameness. There's a comfort in the sameness. There's the expression, better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. And that's a very big truth for people's functioning, that they'd rather continue in the kind of misery and pain that they have than until it becomes so uncomfortable that we're forced to change. But we'll rather continue in a low level of misery than change it, because our minds don't understand what that's going to look like. It could be worse. It's going to be worse, or we're so convinced of our own way of seeing things that we don't want to look at it in a different way. And so we resist changing. So it's only when most people come to therapy when things become too painful to kind of continue. So then they're looking for change. But most of us, we don't want to change until it gets too painful, So we're kept in place by these fears. I mean, we believe our fears and we want to run with those fears, and we get stuck in that. So being creatures of habit we don't like to change, and we don't know how to change. And so when we're working with mental health, it's helping people understand why they're got the way they did, and giving them tools to shift out of the way they are into a new way of being, and to create a new vision of the possibilities. We're actually very fluid beings. We have the potential to be very fluid. We can change quickly if we want to. So right now we've got this momentum of our history to be who we are right now, but we have the potential to just let that go and look at life in a completely different way if we really put our minds to it. So this is just to summarize. Mental health is about trauma and fear, and even depression is fear related and often the result of prolonged anxiety. Those two kind of go hand in hand, and sort of previous trauma where we get into a helpless, powerless pattern and get stuck in a particular viewpoint that's negative. And because we're creatures of habit, it's hard to shift out of those things. And that's mostly what it's about. And mostly it's about understanding fears and having good strategies to help people shift out of those viewpoints and behaviors and into a whole new way of looking at things. And I'm no different. I get stuck into I get into my own fears, and it's like your blinders, that's all you can see. You're focused on that, and you can't see the world in any other way. And I found that when I'm stuck in that, I just need to do something different, force myself to do something different, get involved in some activity, do some techniques to kind of snap you out of that. You really have to we're stuck in a state, a thinking, feeling, physiological, mental state. When we're locked into those patterns, we need to break those states and then have shape our trajectory, our next thoughts with positive thinking, with new thinking, new ideas, new thinking. So it's very important that and I brought in the captain and crew analogy. I always do that. I brought that in a number of times, that our conscious and unconscious mind is like the captain and crew of a cruise ship. It's the captain sort of says where we're going and makes the decisions about what's going to happen with the ship, but the crew carries that out. And so it's important when we're making change to keep seeing a new viewpoint, keep putting positive vision, positive thoughts. Affirmations is a simple technique where we just keep affirming an idea, a thought. And when you think about it, all of our thoughts are affirmations. Every thought we think is kind of an affirmation of the way things are or the way things should be. So when we have negative thinking, we're affirming that thinking in ourselves. So when we do affirmations or directed positive thought, we're changing our thinking and changing our orientation to the world. Another thing is changing our story by physically writing out a narrative about how you want things to be, how things are unfolding in a different way than they have, or rewriting an old story. Talked a little bit about this last time. So that's all I'm sort of had to say today. So I want you to think in terms of mental health isn't complicated. It's simple. That doesn't mean it's easy to change, but it's simple. Don't get all, thrown by all kinds of medicalized jargon. That just complicates things and obscures things. Just keep in mind, it's our fears and our tendency to be creatures of habit, that we want to keep doing things in the same way all the time, even if it's a negative pattern. And so we need to learn ways to shift out of those patterns. Okay, thank you. I've got a dog barking, wanted to go out, so I have to sign off now. But please give me some feedback. If or forward this on to somebody, give me a thumbs up or thumbs down or something. Okay, and until next week, we'll see you. Goodbye. Bye-bye.